Good morning. Y'all gonna have to wait for me just for a second. Yep. I've got 30 coming in here. Y'all move up a row. Not y'all. Chuck, y'all move up a row. We all in? Steve. Everybody in? Good morning. Better. Y'all bow with me. Gracious Heavenly Father, for a cold wintry day, we are extremely thankful. Might put a little hop in our step. Lord, we come to you asking you to forgive us of our sins, to say thank you for the many wonderful blessings that you give to us each and every day. Let us be mindful of the responsibility that you give to us. Let us do things that please you. Lead us and guide us. I ask these things in your Son's name. Amen. First, back here in the back, we have leadership. Murray, will y'all stand up? Tell them. They're an extremely lucky group. They have me, Mr. Ridley, and Rick Jaspers as their representatives. I'm sorry y'all have Ridley and Jaspers, but hey, you got one good one. And somebody else I'd like to introduce over here to my right. This is Julia Martin. Julia, stand up. Julia is going to graduate from the university this spring. She used to work for Lynn Westmoreland, and she used to work for the Republican National Committee. And somewhere in her brain, she wants to come down here and work. So she's going to continue her education, and then she's going to come down here and work for somebody. Mr. Belton, what are you doing at the back of that line? Hey, looks like some of y'all figured this stuff out. You got to come by and say hello. Mr. Belton, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Read you H.R. 462 is the very first one. It's a resolution written by the Speaker's office recommitting the House of Representatives to strengthen military installations throughout the state.
Anybody got questions of Mr. Belton? No questions, thank you.
Thanks, Chairman.
Mr. Kurt.
Morning, Mr. Chair. Good to be with you today. I bring to you today Senate Bill 137, which is the Child Support Recovery Act that simply takes the $25 federal fee that was added in 2005 and puts the onus of paying that fee on the person paying child support, not the person receiving. Any questions, sir?
Any questions, Mr. Coomer? I was Miss Chastain, you're just ad hoc on this, right? Okay. Got another one?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I have Senate Bill 169, and this is the bill that I'm very proud to carry because it comes from a grassroots efforts. This is a back the badge bill. This is a tag. This is kind of what it's going to look like right here. There'll be a couple of little changes made. But this is a specialty tag that people can now buy. It'll be an extra $35 fee. $10 of that fee will go to the Fund for Peace Officers Annuity and Benefit Fund. This was the brainchild of a farmer back in Sumter County after the 2 officers were killed in December. He wanted to do something. He called me. He said, I can't find a specialty tag for peace officers. He designed this himself and sent it to me, and I'm very honored to bring this bill before the committee.
No questions. Anything else?
Just have a refreshing bottle of water from Chairman Meadows that was on everyone's desk yesterday that was shared with me. Just wanted you to know.
There was method to that, but my house has heard it. But that's the water that fracking would get. Therefore, pass the fracking bill.
I'm with you, Mr. Chair.
No more questions. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 bills that I hope soon to be on the list there, so I did want to come by at least say hello. First and foremost is SB 206, which is the hearing aids for children, insurance for hearing aids for children with hearing aids. Excuse me, easier to say, but I hope that'll be on there here coming soon. Asking for that, and then also SB 52, which allows licensed professional counselors to continue to sign 1013s, does away with the sunset that's been there.
What did 52 do?
It removes the sunset for licensed professional counselors for signing 1013s.
You got a comment? Me.
It was approved out of
Mr. Smith.
committee yesterday.
Senator Martin, I want to commend you for your Senate Bill 206. That is a very, very good bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He don't have to, if it'll ever get on the blue sheet, y'all, he don't have to come back for that one. No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And next, our newest member of Rules, Mr. Miller. He has a seat over here, apparently.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to have a seat at every man's table. I bring to you today Senate Bill 201, and it is allows employees to use sick leave for immediate family members. And I appreciate the committee's favorable consideration of it, and we've worked with a number of folks to get this in a form that everybody can live with.
No questions. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, members of the committee.
Mr. Williams. Are you the Williams that's running for governor?
No, sir. I'm just Michael Williams, here, Senator from the 27th District, Forsyth County, Georgia. I bring to you SB 109. It is a interstate compact that allows for EMS service personnel to come into the state of Georgia in case of an emergency from member states. So it's a public safety bill. It's a good bill.
Did you ask for this yesterday?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. No questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Huffstetler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not on this sheet yet, but your hardworking insurance committee at 8 o'clock this morning did pass out Senate Bill 200. This allows the synchronization of prescriptions on a monthly cycle. Patient adherence is a big problem. It's estimated to be about a $108 billion problem. 17 states have already done this. It's working well. And I think I heard one of the members say that his mom's 26 medications, now that she's no longer driving, that we go to the pharmacy a lot. That's what we're trying to eliminate, and I would ask for your favorable consideration when that makes the sheet. And I do also want to tell the chairman that as the Senate sponsor of the fracking bill, I'll be working hard on it.
Thank you. Yes, he is my senator. And he has been holding a lot of meetings and actually passing bills out of his committee, oh, by the way. you got on there? Mr. Harper. I see it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As always, it is an extreme privilege and honor to be before you and your distinguished members of this committee. And in keeping with what you were just saying, I just wanted to let you know, Mr. Chairman, that the Senate Public Safety Committee met last Thursday, and this past Tuesday, and we have passed 9 House bills out of our committee, and we are working extremely hard, Mr. Chairman, to make sure good House bills get to the Senate floor. So
You know the BS content of this place is rather high.
well, I noticed a lot of people have on their high waters today to make
Okay.
sure that they're able to get through it.
I appreciate the fact that y'all met and passed out all those bills, but believe it or not, somebody besides Mr. Powell has bills out here.
Amen.
Tell us about 18.
So, Mr. Chairman, we have Senate Bill 18, the first one under modified structure rule. It does 2 things. It allows, as has been current law, and as we have redone, we restructured the law last year to allow locals and other state agencies, but this is a blanket to allow all state agencies who have post-certified officers under their jurisdiction to allow them to retire with their weapon and badge. The second thing that it does is it's the LEOSA portion of this, what we already passed out of the Senate and the House last year and as part of one of the gun bills. It would allow retired law enforcement officers from other states or federal retired law enforcement officers who become residents of the state of Georgia, as long as they maintain the same post credentials, they can maintain the same exemptions as Georgia retired law enforcement officers. That's what it does, Mr. Chairman.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Underman.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's my honor to come to you, and instead of sending my aide over to you to bring my personal messages, I'm bringing them to you to ask for 2 bills to be put on. I believe it's your recommendation to come 3 times. So I'm hoping that this counts as my 1 time, and I appreciate it. I have 2 bills that passed out of Chairman Cooper's committee yesterday. Senate Bill 242, which deals with APRNs and increasing their roster in emergency settings. And Senate Bill 4, which I have been working with Representative Dempsey last year and on mental health issues. She was gracious enough to invite me to her committee meetings. This year, Senate Bill 4 is a joint health task force, and I look forward to working with her and especially working on issues related to substance abuse.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Walker, the 3.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. I'm glad to be back with you again today. This is my 4th time with you. The first bill I want to ask you to consider is under the Modified Open Rules section, Senate Bill 108. It would establish a Women's Veterans Office in the Georgia Department of Veterans Services. We have about 100,000 female veterans in Georgia, and the governor recognizes that these female veterans have unique challenges, unique to their gender, and wants to establish an office to focus on that and advocate for our female veterans. That's Senate Bill 108. And I've talked to you before about, at the bottom of the page under structured rules, Senate Bill 133. This is a small business friendly bill that would eliminate the nuisance on small business of having to write small corporate net worth tax checks as small as $10. I would sure appreciate your consideration of these bills. Both of these passed unanimously out of your House committees.
Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Walker, Senate Bill 133 is a tax bill, right?
Yes, sir. Deals with our taxes.
How does a tax bill begin in the Senate?
Well, I understand that the Constitution, the Georgia Constitution, requires that any bills dealing with the raising of revenue originate in the House. I'm acutely aware of that. My father, as you may know, served in the House for 32 years, so I heard this at my dinner table over the years a lot. I don't see this, first of all, it's not raising any revenue. It's really an elimination of just an administrative headache, and it's sort of a nonsensical tax, in my opinion. It's a very old law, and we're talking about businesses that have little or no net worth having to remit as little as $10 to the state, so I don't really see it as a revenue measure. But of course, that's up to this body to make that determination.
I admired your daddy. I think he was always right.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other questions? No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are now honored to have the Chairman of Senate Rules. He's going to come by and say hello to us this morning. I have an agreement with Mr. Mullis that he doesn't have to come ask for his bills, but he's going to honor us with his. Now, I noticed that we didn't have any music playing or somebody standing at the door announcing your presence, but we're glad to have you, Mr. Mullis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What an honor it is to be here today, to stimulate my day. It's like, what's the Maxwell House, the first thought in the morning, the first cup? Well, this is my Maxwell House, Mr. Chair, and glad to be here today. I was disappointed I had no music to intro, but it's okay. Oh. No! Thank you. I catch that message. Mr. Chair, I'm here to offer you a Senate version of a House version that was magnificent, that went through the House like a breeze in the summertime, and that was presented by Representative Knight, who will be hosting this bill. And this is the pharmaceutical bill. This is a patient bill that your local pharmacist has called you probably, or when you visited with them recently, has said this is an important bill, and Representative Stevens and Representative Parrish can vouch for this. But you passed this unanimously in the House, and we did in the Senate, and I'd be grateful for your consideration today. Be glad to answer any questions. Be glad to get on my knees, and thank you for such an occasion as this. I couldn't get up, though.
Mr. Smith has just leaned over to me and told me that this was a good bill.
Thank you, and let me tell you what an honor it was to be before the House Insurance Committee the other morning, and it's another Maxwell House moment for me.
Well, we're sorry to have to get you out of bed so early, but...
Well, my roommate, Mr. Hatchett over there, he always nudges me to get up in the morning. I mean, from afar.
Y'all do know that they have a one-bedroom condo. Can you imagine the shape of that bed?
Moving on this morning, Mr. Is my face red?
As a matter of fact, it is.
I would, no questions.
No more questions, thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me also say I had a great experience in the House Health and Human Services Committee with Chairman Cooper yesterday, and I have Senate Bill 088 coming to you, which is another outstanding measure, and I'll be back to ask you for that. But thank you, and I hope you all have a good day, and let me know how I can help you in my little old committee in the Senate.
Well, before you get down, I think you're probably going to get lots of questions on that last one.
I'll be glad to answer them. If you don't have it yet in your coffers.
You can just put it down that some of us would like to do something on a day other than the 40th.
I'm with you on that. I have now, as you know, Mr. Chair, and your committee here, I've had a rush of bills come to me. I've got about 60 available, and hopefully we'll be moving a lot of them soon because I think we ought to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Mr. Ginn.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Said they come to you with one simple request, and I will be coming back with some dessert. Said I haven't got my wife quite cooking this session yet, but she promises that she's making her chocolate pound cake. But I wanted to ask for your support on Senate Resolution 152 and Senate Resolution 224. The 152 is a stream buffer resolution and study committee, and basically there's a court case that took away rested vegetation as one of the issues that we need to look at. When we look at Senate Resolution 224, it's a study committee dealing with stormwater fees, and when you think about it, said there's about 60 local governments in the state that are currently charging stormwater fees. And they're charging those based on an impervious surface amount. And to me, when you start thinking about impervious surface, really that's economic development, that's jobs, that's investment in our communities. And one of the things that I want to try to make sure is that we're not turning our stormwater fees into an anti-business fee. We want to try to make sure that our engineering community is working to solve the stormwater problems and solve those water issues in the state. And for me, I've reached out to my partners at ACCG and GMA and several other water groups to try to see, okay, what can we do to address those stormwater fees that are being charged and make sure that they're not an anti-business fee.
Mr. Golick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, on the stream buffer study, and I know we've had a similar effort here in the House, understanding that the focus of that issue has to do with the rested vegetation issue that came out of the Supreme Court decision a year or two back. But of course, there are stream buffers. We've got about 4,000 miles of trout stream buffer in this state that are very, very important to people from all over the state, sportsmen as well as others, the general population, a very important natural resource. Are you looking at the stream buffer issue and terms of what we can do to make sure that those trout streams are fortified for the future, for generations to come?
What we'd like to do is look at the point from where water hits the earth, so in the form of rain, and taking that all the way to the ocean. So when you go from sheet flow all the way down to the tides of the ocean coming in, and we want to try to address everything in there from what's going on with rested vegetation, what's going on with property rights, what's going on with our environment, natural resources. When we start looking at wildlife and the impact that it has on fisheries and the things along those lines. But we want to try to do a comprehensive review. And one of the things I was proud to work with Chairman Smith that I think y'all passed, I believe it was unanimously in the House, a resolution that similarly said we've passed one in the Senate, and want to try to work together to have I believe that study commission is 17 members, including Director Dunn with EPD and others. So.
Mr. Earhart.
Senator, again, thanks for bringing this 224. Too late on the anti-business with stormwater in Georgia. Maybe that you can get their attention, but you need to talk to the stormwater people in Georgia. They still have this concept that water flows uphill, and you need to spend money on the uphill side of a hill. It flows 20 feet up, sometimes 60 and 80 feet uphill. So maybe once you get past that lack of knowledge in our stormwater community, you can get some non-anti-business.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Martin.
Senator, thanks for taking the question. I'm not opposed to the measure at all. I think local governments can sometimes overdo when they're burdened, but in line 6 through 8, we're having a finding here that they currently impose stormwater collection disposal fees on private property owners without the regard of the impact. If they're, you said in your introduction that they were imposing these fees based on impervious surface. It seems like those two, your statement that they impose it based on impervious surface, and then they're doing it without regard to an owner's impact, seem to be contradictory. I mean, clearly, at least in my mind, impervious surface causes more stormwater than not. So I'm just not sure those three lines, aren't they in conflict with what you said how they were currently being collected?
Well, Representative Martin, you'll have to overlook my shortcomings. I'm hindered by the fact that I'm an engineer. And for me, one of the things that when we deal with stormwater, if you work on let's say a new manufacturing facility, new retail establishment, they've got a lot of impervious surface. There are things that can be done on site, on premise, to mitigate the stormwater effects. So that we can do groundwater recharge. You can do artificial wetlands. You've got detention ponds. You've got grit chambers. You've got oil water separators. There's a mirage of things that can be done to mitigate the stormwater effect, so that no more stormwater leaves that property than before when it didn't have any impervious surface, and it doesn't create any more of an impact for the stormwater system. Now, I'm not against stormwater fees. One of the things that I'll use Athens, Clark County as a good example. Little bitty county, a lot of state, federal, tax exempt property. If you're the only taxpayer in the room in Athens, Clark County, when you start looking, hey, here's a way that as it helps protect a taxpayer by sharing that expense of having stormwater fees paid by those that normally wouldn't be paying any kind of taxes. So stormwater fees are not necessarily bad. The only thing I'm trying to do is make sure that as we address it from a point of view that it doesn't become an anti-business matter.
No, and thank you, Senator. I don't want to cut you off, but your explanation absolutely hits my concern and question. So what you're saying is when they impose these fees, they're just doing it on a square feet of impervious surface. They're not giving the builder any credit for the other mitigating factors, and that's what I didn't hear in your completion of the explanation. Thank you very much. Makes very good sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I might could answer the question about trout streams. There's already an existing section in code, a 50-foot buffer for trout streams. So thank you. Both good bills.
Thank you, Chairman Smith.
Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my esteemed colleague in the Senate, I am so glad we're talking about wildlife and the sportsmen and women. I understand we have a pretty good bill in your committee today that will help the sportsmen, men and women of Georgia.
My understanding from the House vote, it's an excellent bill, and hopefully gets favorable consideration in committee today.
I hope so too.
Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, my question goes not to the substance of the two resolutions, but particularly SR 224. I'm looking at the appointment ability of the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker of the House. I've noticed sometimes in past conversations with our Speaker, he doesn't prefer to be quite as tied down as who he has to appoint. He likes a little flexibility there. Would you be opposed to an amendment to give more flexibility to the appointment as to who can be on these study committees?
I'm not sure if I understand the question, but are you asking whether the Speaker can appoint who he wants to? That's up to the Speaker.
Well, actually, your bill mandates what type of people he appoints, and that's my question. Could we have a little more flexibility with who he could put on the committee?
I'm sure the Speaker will appoint who he desires, so that's no
Would you be
problem.
opposed to an amendment that would allow him to do that?
If it'll help move the bill along, that's what I'm trying to do. We need to analyze the situation, and I'll be glad to work with the Speaker anyway.
Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Golick, one more.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to Chairman Smith, I appreciate her comments about trout streams and fully acknowledge that we do have an existing buffer of 50 feet. That was reduced as part of a package, as the chair knows, in 1999. It was part of an overall, I don't know if I'd call it an omnibus bill, but a bigger, greater bill that addressed several areas. Then the question that this member, just speaking for himself, would have is 50 foot going forward adequate? That's the only issue that I would have on that. I just want to clarify. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great to be with you, and I look forward to coming back, and hopefully my wife will find her secret cake recipe. And
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you I'll put yours on. I better have cake, and then I think Mr. Knight has a bill wandering around. I sure would like to see it out today.
yeah, I'm sure it'll get that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Stone, do you want to present? Well, you got two bills on here. If you want to mention them, it'd be a good idea.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be recognized. Two bills under modified open rule are SB 71 and SB 87. 71 simply exempts health savings accounts in bankruptcy. This is something we want to encourage more people to do, to take out health savings accounts and to provide some measure of protection when they do that. I'll be happy to answer any questions about SB 71, but it is very straightforward.
What's the maximum amount you can put in a health savings account?
I'm sorry?
What is the maximum amount that you can put into a health savings account?
The maximum amount for an individual, when I last checked, was $3,350 per year, but I think it's gone up a little bit. It's like IRAs, they adjust them periodically.
All right, we got Mr. Benton, you got a question on that? Okay. Next one.
The next bill, Mr. Chairman, is SB 87. This simply provides a mechanism for clearing out judgments after someone has filed bankruptcy. There is no provision for doing that, although the impact of a bankruptcy where there is a lien avoidance under a plan or a discharge is to remove judgments. This will help all of our closing attorneys who run up against judgments in their search of the public record, and simply provides a method where you petition the court that issued the judgment, serve the plaintiff, and with the appropriate documentation, the clerk will be authorized to mark it canceled.
Mr. Powell J.
There's already a mechanism in bankruptcy court to do that, is there not?
There is. There are two mechanisms. One is called a lien avoidance motion, and the other is a confirmation of a plan.
Well, my understanding is that even though a discharge discharges the debt, it does not discharge a lien.
That's
you
correct.
have to go through the lien avoidance in bankruptcy court. But what your bill says is simply the matter of discharge would require somebody to remove a judgment, and that's not correct.
Well, there's more to it than just the discharge. You have to show the petition for the bankruptcy filing, the place in the petition where the asset was exempt, and that documentation is sufficient because that's all that's required in bankruptcy to exempt an asset from a lien.
But my understanding of a lien avoidance in bankruptcy court is that the order not only grants the lien avoidance, but requires that upon discharge that judgment be removed. Why do you need something separate in Georgia law that then would require somebody to go back and research the bankruptcy code, research what the court filings were, see if such an order was done? I mean, this is up to the bankruptcy attorney to do it, and if they don't do their job, then why should the Georgia courts come in there and put that on the closing attorney to determine that?
Well, that's what we're doing now. The bankruptcy court does not have authority to order a clerk of a state superior court to do anything with an order entered in the superior court.
That's correct, but what they are doing is that they are ordering the holder of the debt that upon discharge to remove that judgment from the record. So they do have jurisdiction over the judgment holder.
That's correct.
Let's go a little bit further. Mr. Earhart.
Thank you, Chairman. No real interest negatively on the bills. You've got a bill in your committee that's been there about 18 days since the House passed it, House Bill 51. It's starting to grow a little mold on it. The House spent about 3.5 hours talking about that. Is that getting ready to move along, sir?
We are preparing it to move along. We expect it to be heard next week, and we've been hearing a lot of interest in the bill, and we've been meeting with everyone and doing a lot of research. We have a question regarding what we can do address to council at present time. What I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, is meet with you in the next few days so we can move it along.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Willard, did you have one? Okay. No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I respectfully request your approval of 71 and 87. Thank you.
Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put beside Senate Bill 169 and Senate Bill 201.
Ms. Tankersley.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put my name by Senate Bill 206. I know that they've worked on this bill for about the past 6 years, and it will greatly improve the lives of a lot of children and their families. Thank you.
Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name beside SB 103.
Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name by SB 133, please.
Mr. J. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move for SB 133 to be recommitted to Ways and Means.
You've got a move by the Chairman of Ways and Means to send 133 back to committee. I have a second. All those in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, it's back in committee. Mr. A. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name beside Senate Bill 201, 103, and 18.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name by Senate Bill 108. I think it's another part of making Georgia a more military-friendly state.
Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name by SB 109. This is a bill that could have helped us during the winds that just devastated so much of South Georgia and some of the traumas and things that have happened even in the north of our state. Thank you.
Mr. Al Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name beside it, SB 108.
Anybody else? Okay. Y'all want to give a show of being a little bit nice? A little bit. All right, let's put some on. Setting the calendar for Thursday. Under modified open, SB 109. Any opposition? It's on. Under modified open, SB 173. Any opposition? It's on. Under modified open, SR 152. Any opposition? It's on. Modified open, SR 224. Any opposition? It's on. Modified structure. We need to do something for the rules, Chairman. Let's put in SB 103. Any opposition? Under modified structure, SB 169. Any opposition? It's on. Under modified structure, SB 201. Any opposition? It's on. That's a start. The speaker is going to have a cat.